Hello and welcome to my channel. Heidi Thompson, or better known as just Heidi, is the welfare operator of the upcoming Chapter 10 event. As a bard supporter, she can't do basic attacks and instead heals all operators in a diamond shape range. The healing is a restoration healing, which means Heidi is able to heal enmity operators like Mudrock and Heligur. Bard supporters are also known for their ability to give inspiration buff, though they are unaffected by the buff themselves. Next up are Heidi's stats. They are average for a bard supporter. Doing the math, an E2 level 80 max trust Heidi will be restoring the HP of all operators in range at a rate of 36 HP every second. While the healing isn't the best, for enmity operators, it's a nice addition. As for her talents, its effects change depending on the skill she is using. Heidi will provide a small attack buff to all operators in range if she is using her first skill, and a small defense buff if she is using her second. There's nothing much to say about this talent. The buffs are small and almost insignificant. As for her second talent, yes, Heidi has a second talent despite being a 5-star. Increases the SP region of all allies in range by 0.5 SP every second. That is a huge buff. Putting it in another perspective, Heidi will be recovering 1 SP every 2 seconds, or 30 SP every minute. This makes Heidi one of the best consistent sources of SP. But here's the catch. This talent is only active in the Chapter 10 stages. If you were to use Heidi in other stages, you won't be getting the SP recovery. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. Moving on to her free potentials, Heidi gets a -3 DP reduction at pot 6, lowering her DP cost to only 6 at E2. At pot 5, the attack and defense buff from her first talent are increased from 5% to 6%, a really lackluster pot 5 upgrade. Before moving to her skills, let's talk about inspiration buff. It increases the base stat of the buffed operator by a flat amount. Inspiration effect is calculated near the end of every formula. For example, if the inspiration buff gives increased attack, it is added here in the final damage formula, a decent buff effect. Now, looking at Heidi's first skill, she will give an inspiration buff equal to 110% of her own attack to all operators in range, but decreases their block count by 3. The block reduction is absurdly high. While the inspiration buff is good, you run the risk of leaking enemies if your operators are unable to kill them in time. While the impact of the reduced block count is much less profound for ranged operators than melee operators, it's better to just use Sora's second skill, which offers a slightly lower inspiration buff with no drawbacks. That being said, this skill can be really useful if you want to intentionally leak enemies. This skill has a low SP cost of 20 and a short duration. Now, if you think this video is helpful, do give my channel a sub to stay tuned for future guides like these. Moving on to her second skill, Heidi will increase the block count of all operators in range by 1, and gives inspiration buffs equal to 70% of her defense and 30% of her max HP, as well as increasing her healing output from her trait from 10% to 30% of her attack. This skill is geared towards defense and survivability. The increased block count means more incoming damage, and the inspiration buff and increased healing can offset most of the damage. A good skill to use against a big wave of heavy-hitting enemies. It has an average SP cost and duration. Lastly, we have her base skills. When Heidi is assigned to the trading center, the order acquisition efficiency is increased by 25%, which is later upgraded to 35% at Elite 2. Her second base skill increases the chances of obtaining the clue from Glasgow when assigned to the control center. Glasgow clue is number 5. This skill can be very useful if you are missing that specific clue. So, should you build Heidi? While Heidi does offer some unique things with her kit, such as the increased block count on her second skill, they aren't exactly the most helpful buffs for endgame content like Contingency Contract. While Heidi can heal allies from her trait, she can't compare to a dedicated medic when it comes to healing. The only selling point is her ability to heal enmity operators. Some of the reasons why you would build Heidi is to use her as an SP battery in Chapter 10 stages, or for the Clue 5 base skill, or for intentionally leaking enemies. If you aren't interested or in dire need of these abilities, Heidi isn't a priority to build, though I gotta say, that E2 art is kinda tempting me. Just look at that cat on the left, looks like Miss Christine is going to have some tough competition. And that is all for this operator guide. I will be making similar videos in the future, so do consider subscribing to stay tuned. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.